All right, so welcome back to another episode and another season of SOULABOR Speaks. As you all know, I am your host, Destiny, and today we are talking about forgiveness, a concept that can feel both liberating and super complicated. What does it really mean to forgive? Is forgiveness for you or the other person? And how do you navigate forgiveness in a world where trust can be broken and wounds can run so deep? We are going to get into all of that. But first, let's introduce our first guest for season 3, a favorite of the show, a fan of the show, Tyree. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I just want to say I'm so glad that I've reached the notoriety now. It took 3 seasons for me to get on here, but I think
Don't do
my
that.
yeah. I think my following has got up. I think I've been doing enough now. I've been recognized.
I liked enough posts.
Right, I like the post. I knew if I kept sharing, I'll wear her down sooner or later. I'll get here.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
But my name is Tyree. I go by the artist name of Mercy Soul. I am the CEO and founder of Phoenix Mentality Infinite, an organization, a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to bringing redemption to reentry. We work on trying to decrease the school to prison pipeline, as well as help those coming home from incarceration to reintegrate successfully within the organization. And then I'm also the host of the Out of the Ashes podcast, which is meant to provide a platform for people who are rising out of the ashes from their past mistakes, their past circumstances, and things that they thought would destroy them, and showing what it looks like for people to walk out of the fire and not smell like the smoke they've been through.
Love that. And of course we'll get your information at the end, but tell us a little bit about, and this is not even one of the questions, but I think it would be important for people to hear because I work with you, so I know you, but what inspired you to kind of launch this podcast?
Beautiful, beautiful. So I have the beautiful flag of being able to say I'm just as impacted. So that's where my passion drives me from. Launching this podcast, Out of the Ashes podcast, I did a special project, which is so interesting that we are both on this on this platform right now, because I led the affinity group, Justice Impacted Affinity Group, Justice Impacted Voices, where we did a special project called Returning Strong, which served as a platform to interview those who are formerly incarcerated and show their resilience and how they're returning strong.
Mm-hmm.
We did 2 seasons of it. Destiny was definitely a great help in being a champion for that. And now I get to branch out the Out of the Ashes podcast to match my passion of justice impacted people, as well as my passion for God, merge them together to show how we can be, first off, how the church can be better
Mm-hmm.
at supporting those who are just as impacted, but also how those that are in much need of redemption, like ourselves, like me, how they can find that without judgment, without rejection, and within the love of God.
Amen. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm really excited about what you're doing as well. So we're going to play mood music and then we'll get into our questions about forgiveness. But the first question is just to think about a song that helped you heal after a tough situation. You can share what the situation was, or you can just tell us, how was the song helpful?
The song that pops up in my brain immediately is "He saw the best in me
Yes.
when everyone else around could only see the worst in me." And I really, that part, the beginning part, and then the end where it says he's mine and I'm his. It doesn't matter what I did.
Mm,
My lowest points is when I just missed the mark. Just in general, there's so many things that I don't know. Being incarcerated for 8 years, and then my mental being so screwed from my childhood upbringing and things that matters. There's so many things that I learn by experience and consequence that I think in my mind I tell myself at the age that I am, I should know this. With the family background I have, I should know this. And it leads me to beat myself up more than the people who are actually affected by it. And I have to
mm,
remind myself that no matter what, God sees who he's created me to be.
yes, absolutely. See, y'all, I know y'all was getting a performance, did y'all? That was beautiful. That was beautiful. I thought about this and the song that came to me, it's funny. it definitely resonates. It came out years ago, but Monica's Still Standing.
Hey, shout
I
out to
love
Monica.
that song, and every once in a while I think about it, especially if you know Monica's story. I think she wrote that song either right after or not too long after she had somebody who she loved die by suicide.
Mm,
And the lyrics say, I've been up against the ropes, everything you've gone through, I've been there before, seen them all come and I've seen them all go, but you can bet your last that my head won't hit the floor.
mm.
And
Need to add
I'm
that to the
like,
playlist.
yes. And I'm like, I'm still standing, literally. And when you think about life and the challenges of life, to remind yourself, as you have just shared, everything that you've gone through, those things don't define you,
Hmm.
but those things just make you stronger.
Yeah.
And you learn through life that, we are going to make mistakes, we're going to fail. But the most important thing is that we get back up,
Yeah.
that we don't stay burdened by the things that we've gone through.
Hmm.
Um, and we understand that those lessons should teach us something. Well,
There's
thank
a
you for that.
lesson. There's a lesson in every one of them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, how would you define forgiveness? And has that definition changed over time?
Yes, yes, yes. Let's just say I am a Scorpio if you believe in those horoscopes. We can be very vindictive and very bitter, and we hold on to things. God has delivered me. Praise God. Thank you, Jesus. So forgiveness used to be, I will um, stop bringing this up to you,
Mm,
but every time you're around me, I will think about the fact that you hurt me in this way or you did this. That's what forgiveness used to be. Um, I was a church boy growing up, so I didn't really get into my wild stage until after, like early, late mid 20s maybe, and that wasn't even like a real wild stage because of my circumstance. But I basically grew up very sheltered, which is crazy when you think of my story and everything I went through. That tells you that just because someone is sheltered doesn't mean that the wolves won't get into the hen house.
mm,
But because of that, I didn't have a good understanding of people who just made mistakes, right? So when people would hurt me, I didn't understand, like, how could you hurt me? How can you say that
mm,
you love me and you
mhm,
hurt me? Um, so that's where forgiveness happened. But once I start making my own mistakes, and once I start feeling that grace that comes from God on me and the mercy that comes on God for me, then my meaning of forgiveness started to change. My meaning forgiveness moved from just, I'm not going to bring it up, to, I want to be like God. And God said he plates all of our sins into the sea of forgetfulness. That's why I
mhm,
don't believe that you can forgive and not forget, because that's not Christian. That's not Christianity. That's not
mm.
God's love. That's not how God forgives us. He doesn't say, okay, yeah, your sin is forgiven. And then the next day you walk up like, yeah, but remember you did this. No. So my forgiveness has changed. My definition of forgiveness has changed as my relationship with God and my experience with God has grown.
Absolutely. Yeah, you said something that I've learned through my walk in forgiveness as well. And it's like the more that you see yourself, the more that you understand yourself and you become more accountable for yourself, the
Yeah.
easier it is to forgive.
Yeah.
So there are times where I am just upset about something somebody did, and God's like, "But wait a minute." And I've also, and I say I've been blessed to be put in situations where I have to experience the thing I struggle to forgive somebody else. Like
Mm,
I've had to, I have had to experience the same thing that I've struggled to forgive somebody else about. Right.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there's been times where I'm like, oh, I didn't like the way that this person did this in this meeting. And then I'll find myself doing a version of it in a different meeting. I'm like, oh, okay. So I guess that if I'm going to be mad at them, then I need to interrogate myself and understand either why I'm doing it or why I'm still upset. So I agree. I think forgiveness is not only important, but it shows you how human like we all
Yeah.
are, how
Yeah.
flawed we all are, like we were talking about earlier, and also recognizing that mistakes are a part of the process. People are
Mhm.
going to hurt you.
Yeah.
Like no one is perfect. I don't think I can list anybody in my life that has never upset me, right? And even if they haven't, there will come a time where maybe there is some form of disagreement or some form of like some type of tension or some type of situation. And I love how you mentioned like you can't forgive and not forget. Like
Yeah.
the that part is super interesting because we put a lot of parameters around forgiveness.
Yep.
And it's always tricky, right? Because you don't want to be blind either. You don't want to allow someone to remain in your space if they're still showing up in a certain way in which
Exactly.
you have forgiven them for in the past. And so for you, like, what has been that line that you've drawn between I'm going to forgive you and I'm going to forget, but I'm
Hmm.
also going to practice mindfulness when we're interacting, and also make sure that I am still being true to myself.
Hmm. This reminds me of the aspect you have to learn how to choose you first.
Mm,
Um, there's a misconception about forgiveness that says that if I forgive you, I have to just restore you back to where you were.
mhm,
Sometimes forgiving and forgetting means that you still have to depart from that person, but I'm not holding anything else against you, and it's not for that person. That's another misconception. We forgive. Like, I have to forgive you because you need to be released from this burden of what you've done. Forgiveness is a mutual thing. It's like
mhm,
having a ship. When we have a ship and it's weighed down, right? When it's weighed down, it won't go as far as it needs to because it's weighed down. Like forgiveness is like an anchor that keeps us in that same season, in that same situation. But when we forgive, I'm sorry, unforgiveness is like an anchor that keeps us in that same situation. But when we forgive, we unload that so we can move on. The person can move on too. And sometimes that moving on is separate from each other. So being able to choose you in a way where you're saying, okay, yes, you hurt me. Yes, it didn't feel good, but I'm going to forgive you. But at the same, not but, because they say when you say but, everything before that erases. So I'm saying I'm
mhm,
gonna forgive you, and this is where we part ways.
mhm,
Maybe we'll meet again, and you'll be in a different growth level. But as for now, I have to choose me enough to where I understand that we have to separate, and that's okay.
mhm. Yeah. And so you, first of all, you answered all my question before I could ask them. So that's cool. But I would love to know, and this can tie into this next question. So I was going to ask you, like, can you think of a time where you've had to practice forgiveness, right? So we could talk about that. But I also want to know, like, what does that conversation look like? What does that
Mhm.
conversation look like with yourself when you're choosing to forgive?
Mhm. Oh, so I'm gonna go with the spirit of God here because whatever firstly comes to my brain, we're gonna talk about. I was molested at age 8, first time. From age 8 to 13, consistently. These were people that were close to me, people that I see every day. I had to learn how to forgive them without them even admitting of the wrong that they did. Because what I realized is, as I continue to hold on to that pain and hold on to that those actions, I couldn't see myself as more than that person. I couldn't see myself as more than worthless because that's how I felt. I couldn't
Mm,
see myself as more than broken because that's how I felt. I was stuck in that 8-year old's body and mind frame, uh, even in my 20s, right? And scared and not able to trust and not feeling protected. So I had to learn how to forgive even without the forgiveness being requested for.
mhm. And so what did it sound like? Like, do you remember either a day or maybe it was a span of days where you were
Yeah.
like, I have to let this go. I'm better than this. Like, what did it sound like for you to really walk that walk? Because, that is, and I shared this earlier with you, and we've talked about this before, but that is a very difficult place to be, especially when you haven't had that conversation with the person that has harmed you, right?
Mhm.
So what did that look like for you?
I was actually incarcerated when this conversation happened, and I was trying to figure out all of the things that led up to me being incarcerated. Because one
Mm,
thing that I was trying to do while inside is I need to make sure that I am aware of every trigger that I can figure out. I'm gonna make sure I'm aware of every faulty thought pattern that I have. So I did a lot of self reflection. I became aware of a lot of things that my brain just needed to be reprogrammed with. So I started, when I came down to it, I actually wrote a book. It was called Silent Cries. And in that book, it was me as a child, right? And in that book is when I actually started to write. And in my writing, I was talking to myself. And it was me as my adult person talking to the little child that wasn't protected, to let the little child know, you're okay now. Like, I'm going to watch over you. I know that you didn't have that, or you didn't feel you had that before, but you're safe in this season. You're safe in this moment. And we know enough now. We have enough resources now to actually move forward and forgive those who have done whatever they did for you. Because number one, you don't know what they went through as well. You don't know what they went through to make them make those decisions. You don't know if they were molested, if they were abused in some shape, form, or fashion. And not that that makes that an excuse for the actions, but sometimes we don't need an excuse. We need an explanation.
Mhm.
I just need to understand. Not that it excuses or makes it okay, but it helps my brain to figure out how to receive or perceive what was going on.
Mhm. Oh man, you're talking about something that a lot of people do not want to talk about. That is so true. When we talk about that generational trauma, we always think about it from the aspect of our own lineage, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, my mom struggled with this, so that's why I struggle with this, and I don't want my kid. But other people have that same trauma that is passed down from generation to generation. And you're so right in a sense that a lot of times people harm people in the areas in which they've been harmed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we talk about hurt people.
Yeah.
That can't only apply to situations that we want to address and that are sounds good and that aren't
Mm-hmm.
controversial.
Mm-hmm.
The same is for abuse, right? And so like there are a lot of people in the media, celebrities even, that have been accused of abuse. And when we hear their stories, we know that they've also been victims or their families were victims of abuse. And as you said, that doesn't explain it. That doesn't explain the behavior. And we shouldn't excuse the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to understand that it comes from a place of unhealed wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't make the decision to heal those wounds, we will perpetuate them as well.
Exactly. Exactly.
And for me personally, someone who also experienced abuse, I perpetuated
Yeah.
those wounds.
Yeah.
And we talk about forgiveness. For me personally, and it's funny because I've never spoken about this, but it was so hard for me to forgive myself because I couldn't believe that I perpetuated the same trauma that I experienced. But
Mm.
when I took a step back, well, first of all, I had to understand that God forgave me because God knew my story.
Yeah.
God knew that, what my family had went through. And then my family had forgiven me.
Yeah.
And so then I was really the last one. Your family loves you. God
Yeah.
loves you. Why don't you love you?
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to understand why helped me heal so
Yeah.
much, and it allowed me to take a step back and think about how am I perpetuating the trauma that I experienced. We were talking about relationships earlier. In that same relationship that I was talking to you about, I was very, in my opinion, like verbally, I won't say abusive, but I was very verbally aggressive in my words.
Mm-hmm.
And I could have said things differently. I
Yeah.
could have approached things differently. And that was a direct result of growing up in a home where, right, you have a parent who is leading through aggression. That's all you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so you feel like in order for you to get what you want in life, you have to lead the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to work through that. And so it is so important for us to really stop and think about what are the areas in which we are seeing that same harm show up in our lives, because we were victimized, but we are not victims.
Mm-hmm.
Right? At some point in our lives, we have to think about, okay, if these things are still happening, where is our areas of control? Where
Exactly.
can we actually take action? And sometimes healing is the only action that
Yeah.
we need to take.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
One thing we that hits in my head when you're talking is so many times we hit at the symptoms of things
Mhm.
and we don't get to the root cause of it. So you're like, oh yeah, this is a bad fruit. So we cut off the fruit. But we don't realize that the poison is in the soil. Right. So eventually it's going to be bad fruit that's going to continue to come up. When we're talking about our healing journey and we're talking about forgiveness, we're talking about trying to explain or understand things that have happened to us. We have to take the time to find the root.
Mhm.
and deal with the root cause. And sometimes, most of the time, we don't do that because it's hard. Like, it's easier just to get the surface level stuff. Oh yeah, if I just like tell myself affirmations every day, I'll be fine. But realize, like, what is what is it in your life that has happened that has made you fight these affirmations? Because I
Mhm.
can tell myself I'm beautiful every day,
Mhm.
but if I'm looking in the mirror and I see ugliness, me telling myself I'm beautiful is going to be counterproductive. What in your life has made you believe that you're ugly?
Mhm.
What's the root of it? Address that. And then once you address that, then you can use these affirmations to continuously build you further. But do the work that it takes to actually realize, how did I get here?
Mhm. And that's something I'll tell my sisters, like, heal the root so the
Yeah.
tree is stable. That's like
Yeah.
one of my favorite quotes because you then again you start to see and notice and understand your own patterns.
Yeah.
Like this is somewhat of a tangent, but I also telling you I like to follow a lot of different pages on Instagram. I also follow a lot of people who work out, like workout pages, because I know my pattern is if I see something, I'm going to say, oh man, it's going to trigger something in me to say, you're supposed to be doing that. So on the days where I'm like, I don't feel like going to the gym, I get to scrolling, I see somebody doing sit-ups and I'm like, I'm supposed to be doing that. I'm supposed to be at the gym right now. And it triggers something in me.
I love that for you, because I definitely be looking at these workout things, sipping my tea, like, oh, that's real nice. Good job.
Yes.
Good job. No, no, no.
But I know myself, right? And there are plenty of other things that I could see on social media that
Yeah.
could trigger something else for
Hmm.
me.
Right, 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 right.
And so that's why it's so important to know yourself.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'll see something let's just hypothetically say like somebody just bought a new outfit.
Hmm.
I should be doing that. And so those are the things that I have to be mindful of. But I say all that to say, understanding yourself is really what helps you be able to heal and walk through and
Hmm.
really challenge a lot of your beliefs, not just about other people, right? Because sometimes you said this so well, like, well, you didn't say this, but through the story of your forgiveness, you triggered this in me. We can focus so much on the other person and
Hmm.
we can work to think about what they could have done better, which we
Yeah.
talked about earlier with
Yeah.
relationships.
Yeah.
But we don't realize that it's really just about us. It's really
That's all
about
we have
finding
control
peace
of. Yeah.
within us. Hmm.
That's all we have control of. When we put the blame, or when we focus on external forces, we give away our power. Because I can't change someone else.
Hmm.
I can do temporary thing, nag them enough to where they stop doing something. But if it's not natural to them, as soon as they're able to, they go back. But what I can change is myself. I can change my perception. I can change these wounds and start to heal them. I can change what's in me. So how can I? And that goes back to forgiveness and self forgiveness in itself, right? Because sometimes you're not going to always be able to get forgiveness from everybody else from the wrongs that you did,
Hmm.
but you can forgive yourself, and that's in your power. And understand that, you know what, I can't control anything that's outside of me, but I am not helpless because I can't control what I have.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I agree that's like another part of understanding forgiveness more is
Yeah.
that once you realize that other people don't have to forgive you,
Yeah.
then you cherish and you appreciate more
Yeah.
when people take the time to say, hey, I'm sorry,
Hmm.
I shouldn't have done that, I recognize that I was wrong. Because
Hit
you
different.
Yes. It definitely does. Yes. Oh man. So we talked about this a little bit, but I would love for you to share more about that self journey.
Hmm.
So is it easy for you to forgive yourself now? And if not, what are you working on to kind of get there?
I think it's easier. Uh, I can't say it's easy, because I always feel like I have to fight the mind frame of I have to be perfect.
Mhm.
I know once I came back from incarceration, I used to tell people all the time, I have no room to make mistakes. So to where you guys
Wow.
can try this and see if it works. Like, I don't have that privilege, because if I do make this mistake, I can go back into prison, and this time it can be for life. So, but I realized out of the 6 years that I've been on this side that that's exhausting,
Mm-hmm.
and it affects my quality of life because I won't go anywhere without the anxiety of thinking that this may lead me to going back. So I had to learn how to, in my own self journey, trust God. And like I said in the previous one, learn how to seek Him first, trust Him, and then walk in faith that He has me, that His word is true, that if I walk in the shadow of the Almighty, He will protect me. That although weapons are formed, nothing's going to come against me that He has not already made a path for. So my self journey of forgiveness, um, my relationship with God has been what has helped me to progress in that. And slowly, slowly, I've been able to learn how to forgive myself. But I also want to say that forgiving myself is not a one time and I'm done. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I can forgive myself for something one day and the next day it'll pop right back up. And I have to forgive myself again. So forgiving myself has been made easier because I moved it from just I have to do this as a one-time action to it's a continual process. It's a continual commitment. I'm continuously committed to forgiving myself.
That's powerful. And what popped in my head where you were talking is, that's the trick of the enemy,
Hmm.
is to make you believe that God can't use you because of
Yeah.
something that you've done in your past. And don't you see it and feel it more when you're doing good? It's like
Yep.
when you're being consistent and you're doing good and you're, in your word or you're doing God's will. I feel like that's when you start to get those flashes of like, remember this, remember that. At least for me,
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
remember you did this, remember you said that, or that person mad at you. And
It's
you're like,
funny too.
what?
'Cause-
I'm
yeah.
just washing dishes. Like, relax. Relax. I'm trying to put these dishes in. I'm trying to get these dishes done. You over here messing with my mind. But go ahead. You were gonna say something.
I was gonna say I feel actually this conversation and the conversation that we just had before on the episode for for my podcast, I can feel the conviction, not the condemnation. I can feel the conviction of that because I'm in a season now where we're introducing for Phoenix Mentality, we're introducing the pre uh, the tools to prevent the preventive measures for cutting the school to prison pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that um, there's a draw for young people. Young people are drawn to me. I don't know what it is. I don't question it anymore. Sometimes I'll just be like, maybe I'm just immature and it's fun for them, right? But they're drawn to me, and for so long, I've purposely, especially since I've come back, I've purposely kept them at a distance,
Mm-hmm.
although it's a passion of mine. Like I was youth president of my church from like 13 to 18. So it's like something that I'm very skilled at. And I feel the conviction now because even yesterday after the event I had, which was specifically for emerging adults from 18 to 27, and how thankful they were and how like connected they were to me. Even after that, I was talking to my friend and I was like, it breaks my heart that I can't fully invest in my passion because I feel disqualified for everything that has happened before this moment. So that I hear God. Like these episodes are nice, these interviews are nice, but really I'm just trying to talk to you
Mm-hmm.
because there's a season I want to take you to that you have to be able to walk in that forgiveness, not just your self forgiveness, but walk in my forgiveness in that restoration that I'm trying to give you. Like we
Mm-hmm.
said earlier, there's greater for you, but you have to be
Mm-hmm.
able to receive it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like we talked about earlier as well, like you don't deserve any of it.
Yeah,
There's really
exactly.
nothing that gives you a check on the box to God that says,
Yeah,
yep. And, there's really nothing that can keep you away from him and what he has for you as long as you're willing to seek him and
yeah,
keep moving forward. And that's the thing that we have to remind ourselves is that as long as we can forgive ourselves and recognize that we did the best that we could with the information that we had at the time.
yeah,
And maybe we didn't. Maybe we had a little more information that we wanted to listen to. That's okay too. He still loves us. He saw
yeah.
us. He knew it was going to happen. He saw you through it
Hmm.
because there was something else for you, right? There
It's
was something
greater
else here
for
for
you.
you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's so important. And, man, yeah. We can get in our own way.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Definitely. So you talked about forgiving but and not forgetting. Um and I think that one is interesting, and I want to circle back to it just for a little bit. Um you know, what does it look like to forgive and forget? Like
Hmm.
you mentioned it, you talked about how that's not God's will, but what does
Hmm.
it actually look like?
It looks like me not bringing up internally or externally the hurt that was caused by the wrongdoing or by the thing that needed forgiveness. So, for instance, let's say I still see the people who were involved in my molestation. I still see them to this day. Um, they're living their life, and that's a whole nother situation because I pray to God to help me not be bitter
Mm,
because they seem to be able to live, have the family, have the kids, all that stuff, while I'm still picking up the pieces of what was done and the results of it. Um, but what it looks like for me forgiving and forgetting is me understanding that though you hurt me, um, God has something better for me. And in order for me to get that something better, I can't hold on to this hurt. I'm not
mhm,
going to bring it up, but I am going to learn from it.
mhm.
I
Yeah.
am going to set the boundary that needs to be set in order for me to live out the life that we have. But I think it just means internally and externally no longer bringing it up, no longer letting it affect you. And then when it rises up, because it will, your mind will bring it to your attention. You remind your mind that no, that has been forgiven.
Mhm.
That's not even. I release authority or I release possession of that wrongdoing. I think that's what forgive and forget means. I release possession of that wrongdoing. And when I release possession of it, that means I release what was done. I release the hurt that it was called, and I take on the healing that I need in order to move forward.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. And I look at it for me as, treating the person, or treating any future incidents as a new situation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I think sometimes we say we forgive, like you said, but internally when it comes back up, it most of the time it's coming back up because of a new situation possibly, or
Yep.
and sometimes with a new person it's coming up because of a past situation that has nothing to do with them,
Yeah.
but you're being triggered by those past incidents. And so I look at it as like treating it as a new situation, right? But as we talked about earlier, you still have to understand and recognize those patterns, but you should treat it as a new situation, not, oh yeah, and they do this and they do that. Not, it's difficult. Like, even that's even something that I struggle with,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I always take it to God anytime I feel that, because I really don't want to be a bitter person.
Yeah.
I always take it to God. I'm like, look, I'm having these feelings, these emotions about this person or this situation or this incident. Like, teach me what you want me to know.
Yeah.
And sometimes it does look like the removal of that person out of my life. And sometimes it looks like sometimes what it is actually is me being reflected in that other person.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't forgive them because they are doing something or they're presenting something that I am struggling with or I've struggled with, and I haven't forgiven myself. And
Yeah.
so I can't see past it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, like wrestling with that. Or it's just a situation where it's like, this is who that person is, as you mentioned, and you can't change that.
Yeah.
I had went to a training one time and they said you should never, it was a manager training, but they said you should never change a person's, try to change a person's personality or working style.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as a manager, those are no-nos. And I took that into real life. I'm like, I don't want to change who anyone is at their core,
Right. Right. Right.
right? And at the same time, I have to still do what's best for me.
Right. Because you got to admit when that personality is not a best fit for you. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to change your personality, but I do want to be honest with myself. Is your personality causing more damage to me? Because it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It just means that your personality is not for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And something else that you said that I was talking to somebody else about but that I was talking to somebody else last night was, it might seem like those people are moving on, right? But you
Mm-hmm.
never know what God is doing in their lives. You never know what they're wrestling with, right? Um and that's for him.
Yeah.
right? That's for him to figure out, that's for him to work out and work out through them if they're
Mhm.
willing and they're open. But yeah, it's hard
Also,
when it feels like God is not doing what we expect him to do.
yeah.
But
Also understanding that that same redemption that I've received, that
mhm,
same grace that I received, that same mercy I received, the other people are also able to receive that as well. And I'm
mhm,
not God. So many times when we withhold forgiveness, we take the place of God. There's a
mhm.
reason why God is not us. Right? So it's like, yeah, I'll never forgive you for what you've done. Like, so you're gonna hold this over this person's head for the rest of your life. Yet you're in church on Sunday lifting up God and saying thank you for your grace and your mercy. Like they're not also able or worthy of that same grace and that mercy. And granted, we're none of us are worthy of it, right?
Mhm.
But God gives it freely. And if
Yeah.
God gives it freely, who are we to withhold what God gives freely?
Yeah. Ah, man. I really hope that that really touches somebody because I mean what you're talking about is serious. You
Hmm.
know, what you've experienced is very serious. And when we talk about forgiveness, we're usually talking about that person cut me off or, she answered my phone call and I've been
We
trying to
went
call
right
her
into
all
the
week.
deep end.
Man, you like it's over. The relationship is over. But as somebody who has experienced abuse, I just want you to know that I am standing with you in this
Yeah,
moment.
yeah,
In the conversation that we're having is going to be very difficult for people, but I want you to know I understand.
yeah,
I
yeah.
deeply, deeply understand it.
And then I want to say forgiveness is not saying that the wrongdoing was okay.
Mhm.
Like we said earlier, remind going back to it doesn't excuse it. It doesn't say, oh, you know what you did was okay.
Mhm.
It's acknowledging, yes, you hurt me. Yes, it was wrong. But I cannot let your hurt I cannot let the hurt that you caused or the wrong that you did, I cannot let it affect me in my now.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
I can't be a victim today because of the wrongdoings of yesterday.
Right. And then when you think about the work that both of us do, right? And like we didn't know each other when we first started as CEO. When you think about the work that we do is it's really forgiveness work.
Yeah.
It is healing and forgiveness work. So,
Hmm.
you know, just crazy how that happened. But you also, so in addition to working at CEO, you also do a lot of work in the community.
Yeah.
Your platform is really about healing and justice. You've shared your own story about being formerly incarcerated. And so, what role does healing play in the social justice space? To when you think about forgiveness, what is the role that healing plays?
I think the role that healing plays is it helps us to see ourselves, because I feel like, and we talked about this earlier in this interview, when we're able to see ourselves, we realize, to be frank, we realize how jacked up we are.
Hmm.
We realize how, I guess the proper word to say is, we realize how human we are, right? And in understanding how human we are, it helps us to see the world a little bit different, right? We always have, like, we not we always have, we have this thing when it comes to people who are coming home from incarceration or coming back from incarceration, people who are just as impacted, where it's they're bad people, right? But when we understand ourselves in our healing journey, we understand that a lot of us have committed a lot of the same crimes and just have never gotten caught.
Hmm.
So when you approach social justice in that aspect, it softens the heart so that true change can be made, because it makes us remove our own biases that stops change from going forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you and I both know, when we talk about the criminal justice system,
Woo.
we know that it's not all just about somebody committing a crime. There have been systems in place for years,
Yeah.
and there's an argument to be made that the system exists as a means to disarm and disadvantage Black people. And so, if we also think about it from that social justice lens, we understand, like you said, many of us have done things, but also some of the people who are incarcerated haven't done anything
Mm-hmm.
or have been punished to an extent that is unjust.
Mm-hmm.
And so not looking at it based on what someone has done to quote unquote deserve,
Hmm.
right? But more so looking at it like, what do we do now?
And we have to understand, a lot of people say the system is broken. The system has never been broken.
Mm-hmm.
The system works exactly how it's been meant, how it's been designed to work. When I did the last season I did of Returning Strong was on uh engagement, political engagement. It was supposed to be a voting series, but we stretched it out because a lot of people who are just impacted can't vote, right? So what? How else can you create change in the political arena? But in that series, I interviewed Nicole from the Sentence Project. I think she might be from somewhere else, but I'm like, the Sentence Project just doesn't sound right. But she was talking about, she's a historian and a journalist. She was talking about when slavery was actually pushed as illegal, a group of powerful white men came together and said, now, how can we still continue to have the power over these people who were once slaved? And they created laws that were specifically geared towards things that African Americans would do, so that they can move them from being free, because slavery was still legal and is still legal in the Constitution if you are incarcerated, right? So they created these laws so that people who are African American will break them and be back into servitude.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in the South. But as we know, history repeats itself.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're wondering, just like the drug epidemics and how different drug offenses were not weighed out equally, right? But drug offenses that African Americans make were much more highly punished than drug offenses that some Caucasians would make.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the system isn't broken. It was designed like this from the beginning. Police were firstly created in order to be slave catchers.
Mm-hmm.
That was their purpose. And now all of the history of biases, the training that goes on, we are looked at as dangerous. So if you looked at as dangerous, if everything looks like a nail, you will always be a hammer, right? But everything doesn't always need a hammer. Tangent.
No, but you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And we have to understand that. And I think many of us do.
Hmm.
And it's just an unfortunate reality that we are living in, and between the both of us helping to try and unravel and educate and hope better
Yeah.
for future generations when it comes to that and the work that we do personally and professionally. But you are so right. And so we are going to be closing out now. And again, I just want to thank you for all the time. Y'all don't know, we've been at this for a couple hours. Thank you so much for just bringing your voice to the show, and just talking more about what you're doing. I would love for you to just close out just telling people, what advice would you give to them if they are currently struggling with forgiveness?
I would tell you, if you're currently struggling with forgiveness, that you have the power to release yourself. Um, so many times we hold on to unforgiveness because we feel like it has to come from external forces. They need to admit that they wronged me. They need to admit that they did this or they did this. But forgiveness, true forgiveness, comes internally, which means that you have the power to. And as long as you remember that, that means that you can continuously go to the root of these causes, right? And practice forgiveness. Forgiveness starts within yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
then also, the second thing is, give grace to people. Give the grace and mercy to people, and understand that you never know the things that they're going through and the things that they've experienced. So sometimes when we're holding things against people, we're holding things against people with one eye of view of who they are. And who they are today doesn't mean they'll forever be that person. So allow them time to grow, allow them time to heal, just like you would want time to grow and time to heal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and being the opener for season 3. Can you let all of us know where we can find you on social media?
Yes, So you can find me at Mercy Speaks Life on IG, Mercy Speaks Life. If you want to get in contact with our nonprofit, you can get in contact with us at Living Phoenix Mentality. Everything is spelled like it's said. I stopped doing the special spelling. It's just too hard to people. So you want to reach out to me, Mercy Speaks Life, or reach out to the organization. It's Living Phoenix Mentality. We are geared towards helping those coming back to society, transition successfully into society, but also in helping cut down that school to prison pipeline so we can stop them from even getting involved with the criminal legal system.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you again for joining us, and thank you all who are listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and to send this episode to anyone who might need a good word or a good laugh today. Thanks, Tyree.